So early voting is in full swing as New York City is set to elect its next mayor, and new data shows a record number of people, more than 200,000, casting their ballots so far.
Democrat Zoran Mamdani still seen as the front runner despite lukewarm support.
God damn, CNN still got some fucking
some in
dog
his
shit
own
audio.
party.
How is that
We have
possible?
CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton with us now. All right, Harry, put the turnout into context for us historically.
Yeah, I'll note a historic little anecdote, which was my mother voted early. If my mother's voting early, you can vote early too here in New York City. But let's take a look here at the numbers, what we're looking at so far. You know, in 2025, we're looking at, look at this, already north of 220,000. The entire 2021 campaign only had 170,000 people turn out early, and we're only 3 days into this thing. I think we might be looking at the highest turnout in a New York City mayoral election since at least 2001, which of course was a close affair between Mark Green, the Democrat, and the Republican Mike Bloomberg. And you might have to go all the way back to 1993, when of course David Dinkins, the incumbent mayor, was defeated by Rudy Giuliani, the Republican.
Harry, who do you imagine is benefiting from this high early turnout?
Oh, Boris, that is the question, isn't it? And if I was a magical person, I could tell you for sure which candidate it was.
Person.
I am a magical person, but not in that way. I'm a magical person in the way that I'm able to look at the camera, and a magical person insofar as my personality is absolutely fantastic. But actually telling you who it's necessarily benefiting, I'm not quite sure I can do that for you. I think there's good signs for both the candidates. Why don't we start off with a good sign for Mamdani? All right, New York City general election early voter turnout. The top increase in the boroughs versus 2021 is Brooklyn. That is where we expect and where the polling really does suggest that Mamdani is going to do quite well. He did quite well during the primary there. That is also obviously where there are a lot of folks who might agree with Mamdani's further left politics than Andrew Cuomo might necessarily have. So Brooklyn being high in the turnout, that's good for Zoran Mamdani. Now, if you're looking for a good sign for Andrew Cuomo, why don't you look at the turnout by age group? All right, this is 2025 New York City, and the largest early voting age group. In the primary, it was younger voters, those aged 30 to 30.
I'm witnessing more and more people are just obsessed with Zoran like an attractive celebrity. They are willingly ignoring his backtracking on progressive positions like Palestine liberation. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Okay? That's it. That's all. Don't worry about it. If you're out, you're out. Okay? If you're out, you're out. That's all I got to say. Because I don't think he is backtracked. I think he's tried to retriangulate his message, and at times he's actually stepped on landmines for no reason. I do find it pretty crazy that people are looking at his candidacy as he is under an unimaginable amount, a metric ton of Islamophobic hatred that they are trying to repackage as like a anti-Semitic, like a wave of anti-Semitism, as they tried to like hit Zoran on this issue because he's Muslim, and then make it seem as though this is what the voters are actually fearful of, and present that as like an Israel issue. People on the left sometimes find themselves thinking, no, there is a reason for it. There's a reason for it, and that's because he's betraying his anti-Zionist roots or something.
That was the top group in terms of turnout in the early vote. Now look at this side of the screen. Look at what we have here in the general election so far.
I hate the fucking Dem voter base. The candidates always need to be the absolute best. And check off every single box is so fucking annoying. That's not even true. I think the Democratic voter base is a lot more forgiving of blemishes on people's track records nowadays than ever before, especially if they present a left flank position. Whereas the arguments that we're having currently is amongst the left, people to the left of Zoran Mamdani. And I would go so far as to say that the only the Dem base do not have these kinds of considerations for white people. It is very clear. Okay? They do not have these kinds of considerations for white people. The only reason why this is even a point of concern or a point of contention is because Zoran is brown. Okay? Not that it matters. You have to work on it. You have to do your very best to present your policies in spite of everything else. And Zoran Mamdani knows that. But that's it. This is something that I have talked about quite a bit. You have You have a much tougher go at it if you're not a white dude. That's it. That doesn't mean it's unwinnable. It just means it's harder for you. You have to be extra careful. You can't have any deal breakers, right? Zoran doesn't have any deal breakers. And yet, regardless of that, his background is the only weapon that the right forces can currently wield against him. And they're doing so. That's what they're doing.
It's actually early voters who are making up the larger share of the early votes so far. 65 to 69 is the largest group. That, of course, is a group that Andrew Cuomo is expected to do very well amongst. He's expected to do poor among younger voters. So the fact that older voters are turning out to vote so far, that is a good sign for Andrew Cuomo. I won't tell you, though, which age bracket my mother belongs to, because I'm very young. She could be very young, too.
Yeah, very young. Magically.
Yeah, here. So Michael Lang had an assessment. Zohran Mamdani will win the general election, but winning is not enough. He needs a majority, 50+% of the vote. A symbolic statement of broad support spanning all of New York City's 350 neighborhoods. Here is Mamdani's path to a mandate. Get it? Mandate. Mamdate. Because Mamdani. Okay, sorry. Let's move on. I present to you the Commie Corridor Senior, the Commie Corridor Junior, Open Doors, the Capitalist Corridor, No King's Marchers, MSNBC Viewers, the Black Belt, the Anti-Commie Corridor, the Forgotten People, Archie Bunker's Descendants, and Swing States. Okay? These are all of the New York City's 365 neighborhoods sorted into 11 categories. The Commie Corridor Senior, the young leftist base that has reshaped New York City politics over the past decade. The Commie Corridor Junior, the next era of socialist electoral expansion. Open Doors, working class South Asian and Muslim communities, where Mamdani's opened the doors for the left. The Capitalist Corridor, the wealthiest blocks of Manhattan. The No King's Marchers, the progressive middle-aged and older voters in brownstone neighborhoods that broke overwhelmingly for Lander and Mamdani. The MSNBC Viewers, liberals who split their votes between Mamdani and Cuomo and Lander in the primary. The Black Belt, the most staunchly pro-Democrat neighborhoods in the United States of America. The Anti-Commie Corridor, heavily Republican communities with large ancestral Eastern European populations, Orthodox, Sephardic, Hasidic, Russian, and Ukrainian. The Forgotten People, lower income black and Hispanic precincts where the Democratic Party is losing support. The Swing States, neighborhoods where the margin was close between Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani in the Democratic primary and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the presidential election. And Archie Bunker's descendants, the dwindling pro-Trump white ethnics that once anchored New York City's electorate. That's a very funny, in my opinion, it was a very funny way to dive into this. The Commie Corridor, the young leftist base, went for Harris by 83, Trump by 17% in the general, and the 2025 primary went for Mamdani by 66%, Cuomo for 14%, and Lander for 12%. Since the Democratic primary, the Commie Corridor, which, by the way, is Astoria, Long Island City, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Fort Greene, Bushwick, and Bed-Stuy. Since the Dem primary, the Commie Corridor, the phrase I coined to describe Mamdani's left-leaning a youthful base, has taken a life of his own, headlining a New York Times op-ed featuring a primetime CNN segment, receiving citation in the New Yorker, and even a Wikipedia blurb. On June 24th, this ideological cohort, stretching from Astoria to Sunset Park, powered the Democratic Socialist Mamdani to victory with a record turnout and resounding margins. But can the new shorthand for the urban left keep up this raucous energy in November? After all, the youth are notoriously fickle, at least according to their baby boomer parents. Young people thus far have made up a smaller percentage of the electorate than in the Democratic primary, according to the data released by the Board of Elections, leaving some to question whether the Mamdani mania has worn off. I don't think so. Okay? I think there is no indication that it has worn off. That's not how these things work. If anything, there is even more momentum in the general. Okay? That's number one. Number two, Michael from Pennsylvania actually had a good assessment on this, and it's actually becoming clearer and clearer that he was right about this. He said that early voting usually tends to favor, in the first couple of days, the older demographic of voters, and then throughout the early voting, according to previous patterns, it starts moving in the direction of younger voters. Okay? And it seems he was right about this because younger voters are now increasing their turnout in the last couple of days. Obviously, there's still time, We shall see.